life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome to today's episode of Affirm That Sh. Today, you're going to meet Kerry, also known as Kerry the Life Coach, and she is going to be taking us right into her journey through toxic relationships. We all know about them. We've all heard about them. Hell, we make fun of them now. But what is it like to have lived and walked through that? And where did Kerry find her defining moment to walk away? That's what you're going to experience today. If you're new here with us, we ask you to like and subscribe, but we're also going to ask you to join in our affirmations. And these, as always, were written for Kerry in her journey, and we hope that you connect with them as well. So settle in, get comfortable. We're going to say them 3 times together. So when you're ready, find that relaxed space and place. Take a deep breath in. Hold and let that out. I am the embodiment of transformation, healing, and grace. I am the embodiment of transformation, healing, and grace. I am the embodiment of transformation, healing, and grace. I coach from compassion, not perfection. I coach from compassion, not perfection. I coach from compassion, not perfection. I release the grip of past toxic relationships and embrace and reclaim my power of love and courage. I release the grip of past toxic relationships and embrace and reclaim my power of love and courage. I release the grip of past toxic relationships and embrace and reclaim my power of love and courage. Stay with us. Kerry will be joining us in a moment.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yu-Gi-Oh, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Welcome, Kerry, to Affirm That Sh. Thank you for being a guest with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're excited to hear your story today. You know, the introduction, I talked about you're going to lead us through your journey of that toxic relationship and what that defining moment was. But it is true that we see them all over the place. And even now on social media, you'll see men and women both who are recording themselves in that moment and putting that out for the world to see. And not all of us have that story from leaving a toxic relationship like that. Much of the time, it may have been fought behind closed doors and walls.
And I'm so glad you're bringing that up. But I think one thing we don't talk enough is how it started, right? And what I just want to dive into is my first toxic relationship was really growing up with an alcoholic, abusive father. On the outside, everybody thinks we had the white picket fence. We went to church. We always had, Bible study, all that. But on the inside, it's where I learned the patterns that I carried through high school, through my 20s, through my 30s, of repeating the patterns of getting in a toxic, verbal abusive relationship, because that's what I thought I deserved. It's what growing up with a dad, that you were just scared shitless about, right? Walking on eggshells, not knowing how he's going to remark, from a distance. I have childhood times that I remember things that are just so scary, right? I was so much younger than my brother and my sister, so I was hidden, kind of protected. But there was times that I saw him flip over tables. There was times when I was in first grade that I saw him shoving my sister. So if I was in first grade, my sister would have been a teenager, shoving her face in the sink and eating a cigarette because he thought she was smoking. And he was the one that smoked 3 packs a day. And when you grow up in this, you kind of naturally learn survival strategies, right? And this is different things that you learn and you adapt to. Be a people pleaser. I'm going to be sweet. I'm going to make him happy. Always try to be perfect. Get your room, all set up so he doesn't get mad, right? Or be hyper independent. I can do it. I can do it. I don't need help. And also when you're in a family like that, if he was still alive today, he'd be 93. But it was that era that we were emotionally numb. Holy cow. I was kind of a happy-go-lucky kid by nature. But if I would ever talk about anything, you're too sensitive, it'd be like, shut up, you don't know anything. And so those are the patterns I learned. I was in a household where I learned invisible, I had invisible wounds. We weren't allowed to show. And so when you learn these behaviors, what I did as a kid, like maybe being in PTSD, a freeze mode, doesn't work as an adult. And back then, we didn't talk about these things, right? Um, Even when I was in early middle school and my parents were getting a divorce after my dad pushed down my mom. And by the way, he was a successful businessman, a white collar. So it's that image, right, of that narcissistic traits. I look great. But during that time, and that would have been late 70s, people weren't divorced. So I didn't have anybody to really talk to. And once they divorced, my mom was so wrecked from the marriage, she went off on her own, and I was the only one left in custody. So I'd be living in a house, by myself, and there wasn't food, and it was really a survival. And it was kind of a survival getting through. And with that, there comes so much shame and so much pain that you always try to, on the outside, look, I'm okay, but on the inside, you hurt. And my friends didn't really understand, but I am so blessed that I had some close girlfriends that I'm still close with, and their parents, their mom, one of them was my saving grace. I'd stay up to her till 3 in the morning and we could talk. So I did have that one person in my life that allowed me to talk about it. But when this happens, and I wish we would talk about it more, it's patterns I repeated. In high school, I would date the star football player, right? And he was so cute, but he was abusive. He pushed me around. That's when I started getting hit by him once in a while. He would, leave me, never unemotionally available. And I always thought, oh, I could fix him. If I did this, if I tried harder. And I sacrificed so much of just giving and doing and being in such one-sided relationships because I didn't know better. And, you just don't know better. And I see so many that, we repeat these patterns. And by doing that, and back then, we didn't talk about things, you just keep doing it. We didn't know better. And I love how there's so much discussion and there's great people out there nowadays talking about these issues so we can heal from it.
I love that you are bringing in, these are patterns and these are things that I started incorporating even
Mhm.
at the high school level. What are some red flags that we could look out for in these toxic relationships?
Well, I think I always use the word aware, a lot of times with my clients because we need to be aware of the truth, okay? So much, like even if I get back to that high school relationship, that was almost 4 years on and off, and it was brutal. And we live in a false narrative, right? We're going to what we hope they would be. So the most important thing is start, what is the truth? And the truth is facts. So some of the red flags, getting it, being talked down, not listened to, being yelled at, being in a relationship that's constantly up and down, up and down. And that up and down is really a control factor that gets into some of those narcissistic traits that a lot of people talk about it now, because when you go on that up and down, they make you feel good with a little breadcrumbing. And then all of a sudden they're treating you like crap, right? And being like, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're fat, even though your body is incredible, but it's their way of knocking you down, right? So that is huge. How do you feel when you're with them? Do you feel good? um, is it sincere? Are they treating you nice on a consistent basis? Not the breadcrumbs, because we get confused, right? That constant up and down. There really is a addiction. Even Dr. Romney will talk about toxic relationship we can get an addiction to, because we get beat down so hard that we're really in pain and it feels like a depression. But when they give us that little bit of attention because we want love, we release the endorphins, we get the feel good moment. So going from up and down, there really is, that addiction that can cause, which creates trauma bonding. And when we get into trauma bonding, which is what something I could have learned from my father, of trying to get that little love, because that's supposed to be the first person that loves you is your dad, right? That trauma bonding, that's a pattern and it's really hard to break. So going back to some of the red flags, being aware of the truth. How are you spoken with to? How do you feel? Um, are they devaluing you, right? And do they get dismissive of, all of a sudden they don't want you? It's that cycle. It's really an abuse cycle that goes on, the love bombing to devaluing to discarding. And then after they discard you and make you feel like crap, then they give you little breadcrumbs, like those little ducks that just want that attention, right? And we're human. It's normal for us to wanting to be loved.
It
And we,
is. And love is such a strong emotion, such a strong, one of the strongest. And
mm,
when we can vibrate in true, honest love, it's beautiful. But when we're in these relationships and that shame comes in, because you're talking about this up and down, that honeymoon cycle that we've all heard of. We've got the love, then we've got the abuse. And in today's world, I think they call it gaslighting or ghosting. And that's become such common terms that people are just, it seems like they're okay with it when it's really not an okay situation. So as they're navigating these emotions, what is a piece of advice that you could share with them as they're struggling with, oh, but I feel their love today, but oh my gosh, they haven't talked to me, they're ignoring me, they're giving me the cold shoulder, or, the little breadcrumb. How can we navigate or help someone navigate those up and down emotions?
a lot of times educating ourselves, I'll say sometimes with clients, put on your detective mindset, right? And when you do that, it's really being aware of understanding with someone with narcissistic traits, asking what is really their intention, right? And understanding they do the blame game, they do the projection. The projection could be something as simple of you're watching a TV show and that person loves it and asks you, what do you think of it? And you're like, it's okay. And then all of a sudden you're in a big fight. What do you mean it's okay? You're starting a fight. They're turning it on you, right? They're projecting their anger. Really understanding what is under the manipulation, what is under the gaslighting, what are examples. I work with hundreds of women over the past year. And even though each of our own story is unique to us, from all the research and studies and workshops I've done under Dr. Romney, it's all cookie cutter right out of the textbook. How much it's similar of what they do when it comes to gaslighting and putting you down and devaluing you, or they'll use triangulation. If you're what that is, you could have the woman that's taking the abuse, right? And the husband's giving it to her, and the child's there, and they could say right to the child, well, tell your mother I don't like what we're doing and it's time to leave, but you need to tell her. So it's totally devaluing her, talking to the child. And sometimes you might say, well, that's not too bad, but when that's going on for years, I mean, I work with some women that are just getting out of relationships 35 years, and always being controlled, right? Because their number one reason is they want to control you. And when you can really decipher when you're in cognitive dissonance, which is when you get two mixed messages and you're feeling confused, or you're feeling maybe it's me, it's not, it's 100% them. So really understanding and just keep educating, because education and educating yourself is empowerment. And once you can start empowering yourself and learning to put yourself first, that's when your world starts to change, because really self-love is huge on this healing process.
I 100% agree that self-love first. And you've brought up Dr. Romney a couple of times. I know that you studied under him. What is some pieces of wisdom that you've learned in that knowledge, in that education? Because again, you've told us, educate yourself, spend some time with yourself. But what is some knowledge and wisdom in that education that has helped you shape how you coach and lead women today?
Some of the biggest thing that through studying is it's not your fault. They're never going to change. The tools that are huge of helping you through these situations. If you're in a healthy situation, you get in an argument, you can work through it, right? You're with people that you can discuss. When you're with somebody with a lot of narcissistic traits, you're never going to work through it, because the argument gives gasoline to their tank to let them run, right? So some of the tools that were so beneficial for me to learn in when I was in toxic romantic relationships: not engaging, you're never going to win. They're going to always put it on you. Ga- um, Gray rocking, which is so important. Gray rocking is really like, see, my fist is kind of boring. It's like a rock. It's like having a resume, just the facts, nothing that can hurt you. Soul distancing is huge. Whatever you give somebody that has extreme narcissistic traits, anything that hurts you or anything you're so proud of, they're going to find a way to knock it down, right? And if you can go no contact, that's the number one, because no contact is the best way of winning, because you're not feeding. What their main purpose is: having control, putting you down, feeling superior over you.
And that no contact may be extremely hard if there's children involved.
It's very hard.
Because you, again, it's back to the example you gave us. Well, tell your mother this, tell your father that, because it can go both ways. So as we've exited those toxic relationships, we're trying to navigate, if there are children involved, I'm trying to learn self-love. How do I build grace in myself? Because this is not something that is going to happen, especially for those that have been in those 30+ year relationships.
I love that you asked that, because it's so important. And it's hard because they've been beaten up with, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. It could be financial abuse, all sorts, for years. And sometimes it's turning within, and we can't change them. And so it's looking at what you can really control in your life, and you can control your responses to them. You can control your actions, and you can control making yourself the priority. So sometimes we start as simple of, what's important to you again, because you've lost all that. You've lived on autopilot. You lived in numbness. What makes you feel good? What is one thing that you can look at the day to that you did well, right? What's one thing you did well? If it was talking, what are you grateful for? What we start with sometimes is, I'll have my clients leave little stickies on their computer, have it pop up on their phone over with me. And what I did is a big, big sign, capital YOU. And my kids would be like, what is that? And I'm like, it's for me to remember to focus on me first. Well, what about me? And I'm like, the more I can focus on me, the better I can give you. Just like when you're in the airplane, the flight attendant will say, if we're in an emergency, put the oxygen on you so you can help. And you know what? It changed my world. When I could really start focusing on what made me happy, what do I need right in this moment, I have so much more to give to my kids. I have so much more energy because I'm not drained. I've learned to say no. And it's also not only from that toxic, it's anybody you meet in person. You always have a choice. Be selective of who you allow into your life, right? So if you meet a stranger, how do you feel after you leave? Did they drain you? Did they make you feel tense? Did they make you feel on the edge? Or did you feel relaxed? Did you feel joy? Did you feel energized? And that's another thing that's changed my world is I'm very selective who I bring in. It doesn't mean I'm mean to anybody. I'm always cordial. But the people that we are aligned and we're on the same energy level, the same direction in life, or I can even learn from them, that's who I want to be with. And that is a huge change in your life.
I agree with that. And the more that we own that power of being selective, of saying no, that continues to rebuild that confidence, that trust, that love in ourself, and helps us to recognize those toxic relationships as they start to present themselves. Because it's not always an intimate relationship. It could be a friendship, it could be a coworker, it could be a business partner. And so just to be able to recognize that and say, you know, this boundary is one I'm not willing to give up is amazing. Are there any nuggets, clues, suggestions that automatically come to you when you're helping someone go down that path of rebuild?
It depends on where they're at. Everybody comes at a, different time. Sometimes it's just getting awareness and educated, right? But we're always working on our worth. And in these relationships, we lose our worth, right? And one thing that's always so important for me to keep reminding is we're all worthy, we're born worthy. And one thing I want you always to remember is if you're not feeling worthy, you gave it away, right? And when we give away our worth, we need to ask what happened? What made me give away my worth? Because hold on to that worth. Nobody is better than you. Absolutely nobody. And you are in control of your life, and we all have control. Even though we've been put down feeling like we can all get up. It just takes time. And I think what's important to remember, healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a long process. Even today, even though I'm feeling good, comfortable in my skin, it doesn't mean that I might not have a trigger that throws me off, right? And I might have a uncomfortable day sitting with emotions. It's healing's like an onion. And I know I get so repetitive saying this, but it's the best analogy. When we dissected that onion, we take one layer. That one layer had like, 6 to 8 layers, then another that layer. That's what healing is. And so sometimes just to be patient with yourself and daily check-ins are fantastic. And, have that you sign, but also ask yourself, what do I need right now in the moment? Because right now is the only thing in life you can control. The only thing. The past, it happened. So we can't change it, right? We need just to accept it that it happened. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, but we can't change it. Brian Katie always says we argue with our past, we're going to lose all the time because it happened. It was reality. In our future, like right today, if somebody's getting married a year from now, you can't control what's going to happen a year from now. You can plan, but that actual day you can't control. So remind yourself the only thing I can control is this moment. So what can I control in this moment? How am I feeling in this moment? Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. What's causing that feeling of overwhelmedness? And what can I do to help work through it?
Thank you. You have just given us so much to work with, some flags to look out for, some patterns to be cognizant of, and then that inward self-reflection and being intentional how can, because I know there are going to be listeners and viewers that are like, this is the path I've been walking. For those that are listening or watching and they want to work with you or connect with you, how can they do that?
You can email me at Kerry@KerryRosenberger.com with any questions. I always get back to you within 24 hours. Go to my Instagram, which is KerryLifeCoach. You can DM me there. I do get tons of DM a day, so sometimes that takes me a little bit longer to get back. And also my website, you can go there too. And just know you're not alone. So many of us have gone through these really hurtful, toxic relationships. And it's learning what is and isn't acceptable in our lives. It's learning and being aware of what we have tolerated, which is unhealthy for us. And moving forward, what am I not going to tolerate anymore to find my happiness? It's looking at, self-love. I have a online self-love course people can take that is self-paced, and that helps them for healing too.
Thank you, Kerry, for sharing all your wisdom with us today and for providing those resources. And for our viewers and listeners, we'll put Kerry's contact information in the show notes. And anything you want to leave us with as we sign off for the day, Kerry?
Hold on to your worth. What your feelings matter and your feelings are valid. Just remember that.
We couldn't have said it better. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.